Welcome to the Business Credit and Financing Show. Each week, we talk about the growth strategies that matter most to entrepreneurs. Listen in as we discuss the secrets to getting credit and money to start and grow your business. And enjoy as we talk with seasoned business owners, coaches, and industry leaders on a variety of topics from advertising and marketing to the nuts and bolts of running a highly successful business. And now, to introduce the host of our show, financial expert and award-winning author, Ty Crandall.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our show today. So today we're going to be diving in. We're going to be talking about how to get a $20,000 limit business credit card with both Dell and Apple without a consumer credit check and without a personal guarantee. What we're really going to be diving into today is a quick overview of the steps of building business credit and how building the business credit can get you to a point where you can get both Apple and Dell credit cards without a personal guarantee, without a personal credit check. We're going to talk individually about these different cards, what their actual underwriting requirements are, what exactly it takes to get approved. So this is going to help you in a lot of different ways. First of all, it's going to help you because following these same steps we're going to talk about today will get you approved for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 limits with a lot of other credit cards beyond just Dell and Apple. But this is also going to help you today because you're going to see how the underwriting requirements work for two of the probably easier to get business credit cards. Because once you know this, then it makes it a little bit easier for you to come in and get approved for other credit cards as well. To give you a quick overview in case you're new to business credit, we're talking about credit that's ultimately tied to your business, not you as the owner. So this is credit that's linked to your business EIN or your employer identification number. So you're familiar with consumer credit, you have a credit report that's linked to your social security number. Business credit is basically the same thing, but it's credit that's linked to your business EIN number instead, in case you're kind of new to business credit. And with business credit, you basically grow your own credit profile and score for your business. And then the business itself starts to qualify for credit and financing. So you don't have to be the guarantor. So your social doesn't have to come into the picture. So your personal credit isn't a factor for approval. And because the business qualifies for credit, there's rarely a credit check. So when we talk about business credit, I kind of have two different designations. I have business credit or corporate credit, which ultimately has to do with getting high limit revolving credit cards for your business without a personal guarantee, without a personal credit check. Then we get into loans. And with loans, a lot of loans, you're probably still going to need a personal guarantee or a personal credit check until you establish a ton of business credit and your business gets much bigger. So when I talk about credit without a guarantee, without a credit check, this is helping you get 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $1,000 individual limit credit cards with Visa, MasterCard, Dell, and Apple, what we'll talk about today. Not as much loans. When you start to get loans and credit lines, then they start to look at your employees, the size of your business, your revenues, other factors come into play. But what we're talking about with business credit is the ability to build a credit profile for your business, qualify for high limit revolving credit cards, and then also get yourself a credit profile that's strong enough to help you qualify for loans and credit lines. So a business can use this credit for growth, making payroll, upgrading equipment. And you basically start by getting vendor credit, then store credit at places like Staples and Lowe's and Walmart and BP, Best Buy. Almost every major retailer offers this kind of corporate credit. And then it makes it much easier to qualify for credit lines, loans. You even can purchase real estate. You can even purchase vehicles without a personal credit check and without a personal guarantee using well-established business credit. And one of the cool things about what we're talking about today is it can be done really quickly. I mean, you can start to get the Dell and the Apple, the primary products that we're going to talk about today, in about 90 days. And in 6 months, you get to the end of the business credit building process, which is where you're getting Visa cards, MasterCards, auto vehicle financing. But again, business credit building never ends. It's the same as consumer credit building, right? You never stop building your consumer credit report. It's just the more credit you get, the more loans you get, the higher your limits become, the more credit becomes available to you. It's the same thing in the consumer world as it is the commercial world. The more credit you get, the more is actually accessible for you to get. So a ton of benefits here. These limits that we're going to talk about are about 10 to 100 times higher than personal cards. So when you see that the topic we're talking about is how to get a $20,000 Dell or Apple account, that might seem just outlandish to you. But the reality is that you can get $10,000 accounts with Dell and Apple probably within 90 days or less. And depending on when you apply, it's fairly easy to get $20,000 limits as well, because commercial credit card limits are so much higher than consumer. And you can have personal credit cards in stores now, but you can't have a second card at Dell or Apple, for example. So you have a credit card with Apple right now. You can't walk in tomorrow and get another credit card with Apple or Dell. But you can walk in today and get a consumer credit card with Apple, and then turn around and get a commercial credit card or a business credit card with Apple the same. So business credit, huge benefit, because it gives you personal and business credit. So you can have twice as much credit at places like Dell and Apple, as well as almost every major retailer. Plus, you don't need collateral, cash flow, or financials to get business credit. The bottom line is that you can get approved for business credit no matter how bad your credit is, if you don't have collateral and if you don't have cash flow. So this becomes the only option to get money for a lot of people that don't have one of those three things. Because to get a loan, you need to have some kind of collateral or good credit or a guarantor that has it, or you're going to need to have consistent cash flow. If you have none of those, no bank's going to give you money, but you can still get the kind of credit. So it's a huge benefit of the kind of credit we're going to be talking about today. And also, you need to know, lenders review your business credit when determining if they should approve you for a loan. So they're going to decide if you should get the loan, the rates and terms you pay, and how much you get based on your business credit quality, which is why you want to go through and do what we're doing today, because anybody can pull your business credit report. I don't need your permission to pull it. If I know your business name, I can pull your business credit report with only that business name. So because your prospects and your clients and your competitors, and because your vendors and credit issuers and lenders are looking at this, it becomes pretty important that you craft a credit report that gives you the perception of being a credible business. And business credit also has a big value if you sell your business. If you have two businesses to buy, obviously you'd go with the ones that have the highest credit limits attached to the business. So if that's your plan upon exit, then this is going to provide a ton of value. And you don't need a personal guarantee. You don't become personally liable with the type of credit that we're talking about today. So if you get the $20,000 Apple and you were to default, which would be unfortunate, obviously, because that means your business may be in trouble, but they couldn't personally sue you, which is a big deal. And business credit doesn't have any effect on consumer credit score. So the Dell account, the Apple account we're going to be going through today, if you were to get these, there's no inquiry on your credit report to get approved, and they don't report on your consumer credit report. So you can actually max these cards out and not have any change to your consumer credit scores, because they only affect on your commercial credit reports, not your consumer. And again, as a matter of fact, business credit has nothing to do with personal credit. If you look at SBA, if you look at Inc., we have a great link, creditsuite.com/legit. And you can see SBA, you can see Inc., you can see Score, you can see Forbes, you can see all these authorities in the business space, SBA, that all talk about this importance of separating this personal and business credit. And the scores really are big differences. Another benefit of business credit. What I'm going to show you today, you can get a really good score in the commercial world in about 30 days. Because all these scores are based on this payment history, which is why you can get to $20,000 Apple and Dell cards so quickly, because all you have to do is take a few steps or a couple steps before, get some credit, pay the bills as agreed. That gives you a good score that Dell and Apple then look at to use to qualify you to get these high limit accounts. And again, you don't need cash flow or collateral, which makes it real easy to qualify for even as a startup. So as a review, maybe you've already watched some of my webinars or videos, maybe you've listened to our podcast and you already know some of this. So I'm going to move through this somewhat quickly for those people that already do. But you can get started. The first step of building business credit really is to build your business credibly. So what you need to understand is that all lenders and credit issuers have a secret set of standards that they look at to determine whether you're worthy of being issued credit or not. My goal for you today is to show you how to get these Dell and Apple credit cards. And again, this just shows you these two, but following these same steps, you're going to be able to get credit at a lot of other retailers as well. And again, we want automated approvals. We want you to apply and get an automated approval versus that dreaded will notify you in mail in 7 to 10 days, which typically means that you're not able to get approved. So you've got to build that business credibly, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. You've got to probably go with an LLC or a corporation. You want to stay away from sole proprietorships or partnerships because you are the business in those cases, so you'll always be personally liable. which means that if you default on a Chase card, then you're a sole proprietorship, even if you got the Chase with no personal guarantee, they could still sue you because you are the business. So we've got to separate that. How do we separate it with a corporation or an LLC? It doesn't matter whether you're an S Corp or a C Corp, just as long as you're either a corporation or an LLC. You've obviously got to get an EIN number. No, your business credit is not attached to your DUNS number. It's actually built under your EIN. Although a DUNS number is part of the process of getting approved with some credit issuers, you need to build your EIN or get an EIN with the IRS, because that's what your business credit is based on, is that EIN, or built under is your EIN. The same as your consumer credit is built under your personal social. You need to get an 800 number and a fax number, and your phone number needs to be listed with 411. This is a misprint. They both don't need to be listed with 411. Only your main phone number does. And in reality, your local or your toll-free number could be listed with 411. It really makes no difference which one it is, but you do definitely need to get a phone number. You need to get a toll-free number. You need to get a fax number, and you need to get your phone number listed with 411. We're actually working with a credit issuer right now that helps people get phones for $25 to $35 that are business phones, and reports to Dun & Bradstreet, Equifax, and Experian. Really rare, but we're right now trying to help a lot of people get into space to reporting to the reporting agencies to make it easier for people like you to even be able to establish those accounts. But at this point, you need to make sure that you have a toll-free number, you have a fax number, you have a business phone. You never want to use a home phone number or a cell phone on an application. You need a professional website and email address. You can get those at places like GoDaddy for like $12. And then build the website using somebody from a place like Fiverr, Fiverr, for really cheap. But you don't want to ever fill out an application for credit and not have a website, or have like a Yahoo or AOL type of email address. Those things can throw up red flags that could prevent you from getting an automated approval. And you should have a physical business address or get a virtual address. You can go to our website, creditsuite.com/virtual, to do that. Virtual addresses aren't the cheapest. They're usually $150 to $200. So if that's too expensive for you, then use a home address as a last resort, but never, and I mean never, use a PO box or a UPS address on an application for business credit or loans. That can get you denied. Even if UPS or somebody else convinced you that it looks like a real physical address, these are all kept in a database that lenders and credit issuers have, and they just don't like to lend or issue credit to people with PO boxes or UPS addresses. So once you set up that business credibly, then you need to make sure that you don't already have credit established with the reporting agencies. Because what happens is you can't get business credit if you don't have a credit score, and you won't get a credit score with Dun & Bradstreet unless you get a free DUNS number. So one of the first things you want to do is you want to get set up with the reporting agencies to do a few different things. To do a credit check to see if you're set up with them now, and at least to work with DMB to get a DUNS number. So this sometimes happens. People come and say, I have several accounts reporting to DMB. I don't have a profile or a score. Why not? Well, it's because they skipped the step of getting a DUNS. You could still get approved for credit, but you'll wait for months and months and months for that credit to report, because if you don't have that DUNS number first. And understand that when you go through this process and you watch something like you're watching today, or maybe you're listening on my podcast, I make it sound so easy, but this isn't easy, right? This is why we have a business helping people do this, because things like this is where you get hung up, where you might come in and not get the DUNS number, and then you go through and get approved for credit and don't think anything of it, and then you start getting denied because you don't have that DUNS number established. This number comes from Dun & Bradstreet. All you have to do is ask them or find out online how to get a free DUNS number. But you need to keep in mind that once you do so, Dun & Bradstreet Credibility, the division of Dun & Bradstreet that's designed to sell you credit monitoring, will call you and try to sell you a credit builder for $1,500. It's not something you need, but you should expect that. Once you do this and get the DUNS number, it gets you into their system, and you do want to make sure that you're set up before you even get your DUNS. So we have a link at our website, creditsuite.com/reports. That's creditsuite.com/reports. And on that link, you can do a free search with Experian, with Equifax, and with Dun & Bradstreet. The reason you want to do a free check is because Experian and Equifax will populate a credit report for you and give you a score of 27 to 29 out of 100, which is a failing business credit score, just because they know you exist, even if you have no credit reporting that's good or bad. So very different in the commercial world. In the commercial world, you will be issued a failing business credit score even when you have no credit, none that's even bad. And this will prevent you from getting all kinds of loans and credit cards, and you probably won't even know about it because credit issuers and lenders don't have to tell you that they're denying you because of your business credit quality. So the first thing you should do before you take the steps we're going to talk about today is you want to make sure that you do a free search at creditsuite.com/reports, or go to D&B Equifax and Experian directly to figure out how to do the free search. We just made it easy with the creditsuite.com/reports link to be able to get all three and make sure that you don't have credit reporting now. If you have a DUNS number, that again leads to the PAYDEX score. As I mentioned, you can't get a PAYDEX score from Dun & Bradstreet unless you have the DUNS number. What is the PAYDEX score? The PAYDEX score is the most commonly used credit score in the business credit world. So you want to make sure that you get that DUNS number because that's the key to getting that PAYDEX score with Dun & Bradstreet. So once you've done this, the next thing you're going to do is get startup vendor credit. And that means you've got to make sure that you're getting approved for vendors that report to the actual business credit reporting agencies. Over 97% of trade credit doesn't report to the reporting agencies. Very small percent does. Okay, I think I saw a statistic with Equifax that they have less than 10,000 vendors that report of over 200,000 plus vendors that they know of. So it's a very small percentage of people that report to the reporting agencies. We run into a lot of people that get denied for loans and credit cards, thought they had well-established business credit, pulled their reports, they have none because the people that they thought they had credit with don't report to D&B Equifax or Experian Commercial. These vendors sell you things that you use every day: office supplies, coffee, shipping boxes, shipping supply, outdoor supplies. But they'll also issue you credit when you have none and report it to reporting agencies. They'll often give you terms like net 30, which means that you've got 30 days to pay that bill in its entirety. It's not a revolving account. Some of them, like Uline and Quill, make you place 2 to 3 orders first. So if you go to Quill and place an order and they deny you, well, then you go in and place a second order. They'll typically approve you, or if not, they'll typically approve you by the time you get your third order. So some startup vendors include these: Quill, Monopolize Your Marketplace, Granger, and Wells Fargo. So Quill, again, sometimes requires you place 2 or 3 orders to get approved. Monopolize Your Marketplace has a great CD program, a marketing CD set where it's like 5 payments of like $60 to get approved. Granger sells all kinds of outdoor or industrial supplies. What I often find is you could buy things like batteries and first aid kits there as well that everybody could use. Wells Fargo actually is an account that you could use to start building your business credit, but it does require good personal credit to get approved. You might ask, why do I put it on here? Because a lot of people ask me this question: is there a secured credit card way to be able to build your initial business credit? So now a lot of the time I talk about vendors, I now just go ahead and list Wells Fargo to let you know, yes, there is a secured option. This is the best one out there, but you need to put $500 into the card at least to get going, and you have to have pretty good credit to get approved. So that might not be the choice of everybody. Quill, Monopolize Your Marketplace, and Granger won't even pull your credit and will issue you credit that reports to the business credit reporting agencies without a credit check, without having any prior established business credit. So these are really worth their weight in gold. You might look at Granger and say, hey, I really don't need outdoor boots and working equipment. Well, it doesn't really matter what you need. Granger is a trade line that's worth their weight in gold because they'll give you credit and they report to the reporting agencies, and you don't need any prior credit to get it. So find something you need. My fail safe is always batteries and first aid kits, because I have kids and I have a bunch of employees that constantly were in need of first aid kits or batteries. Those are things you could use, and you also can use them to build your business credit at the same time. So again, you're going to need your DUNS number. Now, a lot of these will approve you without the DUNS. But I'll tell you, for example, we see cases where people get approved for this initial credit without a DUNS, but then, or they get their DUNS. And what happens is they come in and start to get revolving credit. They get denied, but when they supply the actual credit issuer their DUNS number, they get approved. So make sure you get that DUNS number. And again, you may need to get a PAYDEX score with some vendors, not the ones that I actually listed. And you might expect to see trade or bank references on the application for that. So when you're filling out the application, giving them a reference to the bank that you use, giving them a reference to anybody else who's issued you credit, whether it reports or not, become important assets to have as you start applying. And some don't report unless you have like a $50 total order. Quill is one of these. Quill won't report unless you have spend $50 or more. For me, when I'm building business credit for companies, I make sure that every order is $50 or more, period. Because some of them won't report unless it's $50. You don't want to wait months to figure out they didn't report because you didn't spend enough. So my advice is just spend at least $50 with each vendor that you're building credit for to be able to make sure that they report. Often you need to apply for credit and go through 1 or 2 denials before approval. This is the case with Uline and Quill. They often will, as I mentioned, deny you and make you place those 2 or 3 orders to get approved. So just some things to keep in mind when it comes to startup vendors. So you'll need 5 of these accounts to get to store credit, to get to the Dell, to get to the Apple, to get to most major retailers, you need at least 5 accounts reporting. A lot of people get confused here because what happens is they watch this, they listen on our podcast, then they go and try to get Costco and they get denied and they say, why I have 5. 5 is the starting point where you can start to get revolving credit. Let me explain it, I guess, that way. Okay, I like this number 5 because 5 is where you can start to get approved for revolving credit if you have 5 accounts on your business credit reports. You can go to Staples and probably get a net 30 account with you only have 3 accounts reporting. But I like 5 because at this step in my mind, the next step is to get revolving credit, not vendor credit. You could get vendor credit at a place like Office Depot and Staples with fewer than 5 accounts, but it wouldn't be revolving. It would usually be net 30 accounts. So to get revolving accounts in the next step, you really need to have at least 5. You've got to make sure that once you're approved, you start paying your bills as quickly as possible. Okay, you're done at your back. Your business credit scores are primarily based on payment history. So a couple things to note here. 1, do not pay it early, meaning do not pay it before they ship. They need to ship the item, and then at that point you can pay it. Some places like Office Depot and Staples in my world, they won't even let me pay. When they ship, I want to go on and pay right away. They won't even let me pay. I have to wait for them to populate a statement for me. So pay it as early as you can, but don't pay it too early before the item ships or it won't count as trade credit. It'll count as cash and it won't report on the reports. Okay, as with all credit, you got to pay responsible on time. We talked about that. Don't use more credit than, of course, you're comfortable with paying back as well. Okay, that's very important. Again, I kind of think that works on a common sense kind of scenario where, you don't want to take out more credit than you can actually pay back. So use it responsibly. And this means keeping your utilization typically under 30% of your available credit. But remember, it doesn't really matter with credit scores. With IntelliScore, with Experience Bank credit score, only 10 to 15% of their score deals with utilization. With Equifax and DMB, none of their score deals with utilization. So although this won't affect your score, again, it will affect your score with Experian. It will affect your score with FICO SPSS. So it will affect some of your commercial scores, not a lot, and it won't have nearly the impact that it has on consumer credit if you're overutilized. But keeping your utilization in line is what a lot of credit issuers like to see to issue you more credit. While I'm on this point, let me bring up something else I don't usually talk about, which is the fact that your commercial credit reports will not show your limits. They show the recent amount of credit you've used. Credit issuers look at this. So if they pull it up a credit report, see 5 trade lines that you have, and all of them have less than $50 or $100 as the high credit that's used, they're not going to issue you a really high limit right out the gate, which means that the more credit you're using, the higher the limits you get, the same as the higher the limits you get, the higher the future limits you get. So don't be timid about using your business credit and paying it off. And that's a common thing. So we can go to Amazon and buy a lot of things, but we still go to Staples and buy a bunch of stuff just because that way it helps us to have the recent amount of high credit we're using be higher. And then that affects the amount of credit that other companies give us as well. So even though I can go to use my Best Buy commercial credit card to get computers, Well, I'm going to go ahead and go to Apple or Dell to spread it out so I have as much recently high credit on my report as I can, which helps me get future approvals. So this will take about 30 to 90 days, 60 days on average to get these to show up on your report. So people ask all the time, how long does it take to build business credit? And I can explain it this way. Business credit time building is based on two factors. One, how much credit are you applying for? If I tell you you need 5 trade lines, and you go in and get 7 or 8 vendor accounts, your credit's going to be built for some faster than somebody that only got 5. Why? Because some of those 5 that they got probably will take 2 or 3 months to report. Whereas if you get 8, you have the best chance of getting those accounts to report within 30 days versus 90, which helps you get to the next step of building business credit quickly. So it really comes down to how fast you apply. And the second factor is how long it takes for that credit to report. Places like Quill can report quarterly. So if you get credit now and use it, you have to wait 3 months for it to show up. Well, then you'd rather use the Uline that shows up a month from now versus 3 months from now. So I tell people it takes about 60 days on average for those accounts to report, because I'm taking into account that some report quarterly or over 90-day time period and some report over a 30-day time period. You can't ask them this. You can ask Quill, how long does it take you to report? You report quarterly or monthly. You can ask Quill, you can ask Uline, you can ask any of these creditors if you want to know. But my advice is to get more than 5. That gives you the best chance of them reporting in 30 days versus 90, so you can move on to the next step that we're talking about right now, which is revolving store credit. So once you have those 5 or more accounts, well, then you can move on to revolving store credit. Remember what I said, you can still get vendor credit with places like Staples and Office Depot with 30 days to pay, but it's revolving credit that actually takes a little longer. So for example, yesterday I went in and got approved for an Amazon credit card. No flipping clue why it's taken me so long to do it, because we buy stuff on Amazon all the time. It's just been so easy to use one of our Visa or MasterCard commercial accounts versus get Amazon. So when I went through the Amazon application process, it was interesting because it gave you both options. You can apply for the Net 30 account, or you can apply for the revolving account, whichever you'd prefer. So you could get that Net 30 account with less than 5 accounts. I talked to somebody at a conference I was speaking at last week that had 2 accounts and got the Net 30 account, but you're not going to get the revolving account with Amazon, for example, unless you have more accounts reporting. So it's the revolving credit that usually takes the 5 or more. And Amazon, Best Buy, Staples, Office Depot, these are the places that will start to approve you fairly easily early on with 5 accounts reporting. This is pretty strong, because I try to tell everybody we talk to that's looking for financing to think about what it is that you need for your business that you may use a loan or credit line for. And most of the stuff you're going to think you need, you could use commercial credit cards for instead of getting a loan or a credit line. You can come in and get an Amazon. You can get, which, let's be honest, I mean, at Amazon, you could buy almost anything you could possibly need. You can get the office supplies at Staples and the computers you need at Best Buy. And you can use these kind of commercial credit cards to get most of what you need to fund your business, which means you need lower amount of a loan and credit line, which makes it easier to get. It's much easier for you to get a $10,000 credit line than a $50,000. It's much easier to get a $50,000 credit line than $150,000. So again, your goal is to use commercial credit to pay for as much stuff in your business growth as you can. Then you don't need as high of a loan or a credit line. And what you'll find with this strategy is then it's much easier to get approved for the actual loans and credit lines you need, instead of trying to get one credit line for 50 grand. Well, why do you need 50? Well, I got to buy computers. I got to buy furniture. I got to buy supplies. Well, don't use a credit line for that. Use IKEA commercial credit card for the furniture. Use Staples for the supplies. Use Dell and Apple for the computers. Now, instead of needing 50, you maybe only need 10. And it's much easier, again, to get that credit line for 10 than it is to get it for 50. So again, this also includes Dell and Apple, which we're going to be talking about today, that you could start to get approved with a handful of accounts reporting. But you've got to get those 5 starter vendors first to be able to do that. And now some of these will look like they have a time and business requirement, and that's why you need to get those starter vendors. Almost all of them do. So for example, when I look at an Office Depot or a Staples application, it says that you need to have, I think 1 year in business or 3 years in business or $1 million in revenue. You need both of those. Well, the reality is, if you go to Office Depot and Staples with 5 trade lines, good credit report, or good credit scores with Experian and DMV, you can definitely get approved, even if your revenue is $100,000 a year and not $1 million. Their applications won't tell you this, but the reality is that what their computers are really looking for is your score and your trade lines. If you set up your business credibly, as I've shown you before, and you have the right amount of trade lines and you have the right score, then what's going to happen is you're going to be able to actually get approved, even if you don't have the revenue, even if you don't have the time in business that their applications may claim that you actually need to get approved. So some stores, though, like Home Depot and Staples, they do have longer time in business requirements. Staples isn't as strict. Home Depot is. Like Home Depot wants you to be in business 3 years or longer, and it's pretty tough to get approved for them unless you have a lot of trade lines or that 3 years. Okay, so keep in mind that some creditors will, but having a professional business pays off. Having the duds, having the credibility, having the trade lines, if you have that, that's really the basis to get around a lot of these 3-year requirements that you'll see. A lot of the applications want names of an authorized officer, your annual income, and more. Pretty standard stuff for a business application, nothing you wouldn't expect. You need to fill these applications out thoroughly to avoid a denial, and don't lie on them either. Okay, that's just fraud. And I've seen a lot of people get into trouble for inflating the amount of revenues that they have on applications. So don't feel compelled to do that, because in doing so, if you ever default and they find out your revenues weren't there, you're going to have an issue. And just so you know, that's on your credit report. Your credit reports tell what your revenues are, and your credit reports can even show what your profits are, because that's public information. When you file annual reports every year with your Secretary of State, that data goes to the reporting agencies, and a lot of that stuff shows on your report. So you need to know that, because if you're telling them that you do $5 million a year in revenue and they pull your DMV report that shows you only do 500, well, then not only can I get you denied, that could be a potential fraud and get you some trouble there as well. So let's get in with Apple. So Apple's comes from Barclays Bank. That's where you're actually going to go through to get approved. You need to know. Now, all credit that's issued by stores is backed by someone. In this case, Apple is backed by Barclays Bank. And you can go to barclaycardus.com/apply/application.action to actually get more info and an application from Barclays. So rewards are not great unless it's for Apple products or dining out. So a lot of people get credit cards for reward points. What's nice about Apple's credit card is you can get reward points with it, which is pretty cool. But of course, as you can imagine, it's with Apple products where you're gaining those reward points. There's no annual fee for Apple's credit card. You can also earn Apple Store or iTunes gift cards for every 2,500 points earned. So this is really cool. The benefit of having an Apple's commercial credit card is that, unlike a regular store credit card, you're actually getting a lot of points here. And this iTunes gift card is really cool because there's a lot of things that you can buy on iTunes. I know my son, this is all he wants for Christmas at 8 years old, because he buys all kinds of crazy stuff on there. Not to say to use your Apple points from your business for personal, but I'm just saying there is a lot of uses that you could probably get from the Apple Store iTunes gift card that you get with using the Apple card. You automatically receive a $25 Apple Store iTunes gift card upon approval with the Apple commercial credit card. Apple wants the following on their application: SSN and date of birth, mother's maiden name, ID number like that from your driver's license to prove your ID. The key is to not give them your social. Okay, so a lot of applications nowadays won't let you apply online. I gave you the example of Amazon. When you apply for Amazon, they tell you flat out, they give you a section that says you have to click and say you'll give a personal guarantee, where they ask for your social and date of birth. And what's nice about it is that that's nice because they give you a choice. A lot of online applications won't give you a choice. There's just a social and you have to fill it out or not. When you run into those, that's when you need to call and apply, or fax and apply if you have the trade lines you need to get approved, versus trying to fill it out online, because you don't want to give this social. If you do, they're going to do a personal credit check and they're going to do a personal guarantee. Remember, there's no law that says you must supply your social when you apply for credit. There is a law that says that you can't actually use anything in place of your social security number in the social security number field. Not an attorney, I don't claim to be. Okay, but I will tell you this, that in the research I've done, you're violating 2 federal laws and you're misidentifying or you're misrepresenting your social security number if you put something like a CPN number in place of your social. So never put anything in place of your social. You just leave it blank. It forces them to pull your business credit instead. If you get turned down, try again. But my advice is not to try again right away. What you want to do is get some more vendor accounts or trade lines before you actually apply. This is the same with business credit building in general. If you ever apply for an account and get denied, then what you want to do is basically get some more trade lines and reapply. You probably just haven't met the trade line threshold to actually get approved the first time around. Use this card solely for Apple purchases. It's an Apple Store credit card, not used for other places. The rewards are the best for Apple products. And again, you do better on interest with other cards if you're buying Apple products. Pretty common sense, right? I mean, ultimately what we're saying is that, Apple wants you to use their own credit card to buy their products. In doing so, they earn the interest on the credit card, and then they really benefit you with the Apple iTunes credit points and with other in-store credit that you can use for other purchases. So when it comes to Dell wants account payable information on the actual application. They'll give you credit up to 50 grand. So here's how it works. If you want to, and I will show you this here in a minute. I'm gonna take you beyond Dell and Apple and tell you about Visa cards, MasterCards, etc. But to get to the next step of building business credit, you need to have at least 10 accounts reporting, the 5 vendors we talked about, and then Dell and Apple and probably 5 retailers. And you need 1 account limit to be 10,000 or higher. We commonly push our clients to Dell, not push, but recommend our Dell to our clients, because Dell does give you 10,000 pretty easily early on in the process. They'll give you a $10,000 approval even 60 days into building your business credit if you have the 5+ trade lines in a lot of cases that we've seen. And it's pretty common to even get up to $50,000 with them once you build business credit. So what determines this? Well, it depends on how deep your credit is when you apply. So, for example, if I want a really high limit Amazon credit card, I'm not going to get my 5 minimum and go to Amazon next. Because if I do that, Amazon might give me a $3,000 to $8,000 limit. But if I built another 5, I got Dell and I got Apple and Staples and Office Depot, and I go to Amazon with 9 or 10 accounts reporting, and Dell's already given me my $10,000 high limit, now instead of getting that 3 to 8, I'm probably going to get somewhere between 10 and 17 with Amazon. So what I'm saying is that apply for the ones that you don't use a lot of credit with probably earlier in the process. And then the ones you use a lot, those are ones you probably want to get after you have more and more trade lines, because that'll help you get higher limits with the accounts that you use a lot of the time. So for example, we use Dell, Apple, and HP all the time, because we have an office that's growing quickly. So just today, as a matter of fact, I ordered another $3,000 worth of computers using our commercial credit. So we need a bunch of credit with HP. So we didn't apply for a bunch of credit with them until we already had a lot of credit established. So we have no problem getting any of the credit we need when we need it. So all I'm saying is think about the retailers that you use credit the least. Apply for them first so your limits are lower in the beginning. Then the more credit you get, the higher the limits get. And then that way reserve the ones that you know you're going to use a lot till you have 10 or so trade lines to help you get the higher limits that are the $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 limits. So Dell is provided through a company called WebBank. Interest rate depends on credit worthiness. It can be a max of 29.49, which is about the same as commercial or consumer credit cards as well. And you can go to this long link. If you are on the podcast, I'm not even going to bother trying to tell you how to get to this link. It's so complicated. If you are watching right now on a webinar or YouTube, take a screenshot of this because it's a pretty long transaction. But you can also go to just Dell and search for commercial credit account and find the link as well. But here's the direct back link to actually get approved for Dell. Again, I'm going to give it about another 30 seconds or so here so you can take a screenshot if you're watching this live or on YouTube. So then that way you can actually get this link. This is the back link, the kind of secret link to their commercial account. Remember, a lot of them don't promote and make it easy for you to get no PG commercial credit. which is why these backlinks are a little confusing in some cases, because they want you to provide a personal guarantee if you're willing to. But in this case, what I'm teaching you is how to get the credit without the guarantee, without the credit check. So you got to be in business at least 6 months for Dell, a paydex of 78 or more. Remember, we talked about this earlier. We talked about that your credit score is based on how you pay. An 80 paydex score literally means that you pay your bills as agreed. So all you have to have credit score-wise with Dell is just a credit score that means you paid your bill without being late. If you're paying your bills without being late, you have that 78 score that you need. And you're also going to need a current employer name. Again, they're going to ask for that social security number, date of birth, mother's maiden name, which is usually used as a security question, which is why they're asking it, and an ID number such as driver's license, passport, etc. Remember, do not give them your social. If you give them your social, you're providing a personal guarantee and a personal credit check. Okay, if you can't get through the application this way, call or fax the application without putting the social on there. And here's the phone number, speaking of calling, to be able to call them. It's 800-999-3355. That's 800-999-3355. If any online application requires your social, don't give it to them because you're providing a PG. Maybe you're willing to, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to go to Dell and provide a personal guarantee, your personal credit's pretty good, and you don't mind the inquiry, then go for it, do it. But my advice is, in any situation where you can get around doing it, do. And here's why: because there's a lot of loan products out there, including high-limit credit cards, where if you have even 1 or 2 recent inquiries, they won't approve you. So inquiries mean a lot in our world. In our world, meaning the commercial world. I imagine that you're watching this, or listening, you either own a business or want to own a business. In you and I's world, in the commercial world, inquiries matter a lot. You need to make sure you keep as many inquiries off your credit report as possible, because even 1 or 2 can prevent you from being able to get the credit and loans that you want to get. So credit limits with Dell and Apple. Business credit limits, again, are a lot higher than consumer credit limits. This is why, because they know you're going to use the credit more often. So one of the core components of credit is called capacity, and businesses have a greater capacity or need for credit than the consumer does. Well, Dell and Apple are perfect examples. I mean, you're not going to need $20,000 in Dell or Apple consumer credit, because you're probably never going to put $20,000 worth of computers in your home at any given time. But this means not even enough for a lot of businesses. So this is why these limits are so much higher, because they know you have a greater appetite for credit. And according to the National Small Business Association, half of all business owners carry some sort of balance from month to month, with 9% carrying a balance over $25,000. That's pretty crazy. So a lot of people think, wow, that's so high, 25 grand. But you have to keep in mind, businesses are often spending this in a month and then paying it off. So it's very common to be able to spend $25,000 in a month and pay it off. About 10% of all businesses are doing that. That's, again, why these limits are so much higher, because they know that you're going to use higher limit accounts. So creditcards.com says businesses use their credit card an average of 20 times a month. So again, when you see it's easy to get business credit, when you see the limits are high, this can create some skepticism. But you have to keep in mind that businesses are different than consumers. Businesses use their credit cards a lot more often than consumers. They pay them off a lot more often than consumers. Okay, they need a lot higher limits than consumers. So for example, just with me, the last 3 weeks, I've been everywhere. I've been to Las Vegas. I don't even know where I've been. I've been to Arizona. I just spoke at a conference in Orlando. I'm all over. So just in this month in October, I had to have spent $15,000, $20,000 in traveling expenses. So it's very common for business owners to put a bunch of money on their cards and pay them off, which is why these limits are so much higher. So a $10,000 limit with Apple and Dell is pretty typical about 60 days into it, as long as you show good payment history. And again, you're going to get even higher limits, the 20, 30, 40, 50,000 if you have more than 5 trade lines when you come in and start to actually get approved. So usually credit limits are increased automatically as you're using these cards. So you want to have the account open typically for 6 months. You want to have a great payment history. You want to keep your credit utilization low. Those are usually the factors they're looking at to give you automatic increases. So here's a little hack that I've learned. whenever I get any kind of consumer or commercial credit score or credit card, what I always do is I call the credit issuer immediately and I apply for, and I tell them I want a higher limit. So for example, the most recent account I did this with was American Express. We just got an American Express card. I called American Express immediately and I said, hey, thanks for the card, appreciate the limit. I've got cards that have higher limits that I'm going to use more often than this because this limit isn't as high. I'd like to apply for a higher limit. They said, how much you want to apply for? I said, I don't know, 50% more than you gave me. I applied and instantly was approved for 50% more than they gave me. I do this with every credit card I've ever issued. I call them up, I immediately ask them for an increased limit, and one of two things happens. Either one, they tell me what I just put here. You need to be in business 6, or you need to be using this card for 6 months before we'll entertain giving you an increased limit. Or 2, they increase my limit. Now there is a third outcome. They can pull your credit and cancel your card altogether. It can happen. I've heard it happen. It's never happened to me. So there is a risk by using this tactic. But I personally, every consumer and commercial credit card I get, I call, immediately ask them to raise my limit. And about 50% of the time, I'm successful. The other 50%, they say I need to use it for 6 months or more. So just some tips to be able to get your limits increased. Ask customer service, just call them and ask them to increase your limit. What I like to tell them is this. I say, look, I have got 2 credit cards recently, yours and somebody else's. Now, I don't lie, so this is usually the case when it happens. And I say, the other one has a much higher limit. So I'm going to use that one over yours because I always use and keep in my wallet the highest limit card that I have, which I'm sure you do the same. That's how I am on the personal side too. My wife and I carry 1 credit card only, and it's the highest limit account we have because, like, we can buy a car, we can buy whatever we need with that 1 account. So there's no reason to carry around a bunch of different credit cards. They know that you do this. That's why credit issuers constantly increase your limits, because they can't just keep your limit the same while everybody else is increasing them, because they know you'll no longer use them if you have a smaller limit. So call and ask them, and just by asking them, you can oftentimes find that they'll increase your limit. The issuer will likely pull your business credit reports. I do not let them pull my consumer reports, and I ask that question. I say, for you to look at this and make a decision, do you need to pull my consumer credit reports? This is for consumer cards, and if I gave my social on a business card, which I don't do that, but if that were to happen, I'd always ask them, are you going to pull my consumer credit report? Because if they say yes, I say, no, thank you. I don't need an increased limit. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And here's why. I don't need them to put an inquiry on my credit report to give me an extra $5,000 worth of credit when I can apply for a brand new credit card and use that inquiry to get another $10,000 to $20,000 worth of credit. So if they ever pull my consumer credit for the decision, I never let them do it. But keep in mind, they'll likely pull your business credit to make that decision. So use your cards frequently. Using them will help your case because they want to see you're using the card, that you're managing it responsibly, that you're paying down the limit. If you go to apply for them and your limit's already maxed out, they're typically not going to issue you more credit. They want to make sure you've been paying your bills timely. They also want to make sure that you are not maxing out the card with you, and that's why you're applying for more credit. Ask for a credit limit increase on your best cards first, the ones that already have the higher limits. This is a really great tactic, really good tactic. Because in the commercial and consumer world, the credit limits that you're issued are pretty relative to what you already have. So if you already have a $5,000 consumer credit card, your next approval is probably going to be for 6, 7, 8. It's not going to be for 20 because all you've shown is that you're responsible enough to handle 5. But this is a big benefit of building business credit right here, because business credit accounts, it's really weird compared to consumer credit. They raise your limits so high, so fast. So you start building with those vendor credit accounts, and you're usually going to get $500 to $2,500 in initial credit per vendor. Then when you start getting your 5 and you start getting to revolving, they immediately start to give you 5 and 10,000. That does not happen in the consumer world. You jump real quick from 2, 3 grand to 5 to 10 grand in approval limits. Once you hit the 5 to 10, then you jump really quick to the 15 to 20 mark. And once you hit 20 with limits, they immediately start to put you up to $30,000, $40,000 limits. So these limits can increase really far, really fast. So focus on the highest limit accounts you have, because if they raise the limits on those even higher, then the other credit issuers see that you've got that higher limit and they start mimicking that or higher, and it just snowballs so quick. You just start getting such high limits that quick using that tactic. So having past due payments and other negative history will not help your case, obviously. One of the two most common reasons that I see people get denied for credit line increases is they recently went late on their payments, and or they actually can't or haven't been using them for 6 months or more. Those are the most two common reasons I see people deny. A third reason, again, is that they're overutilizing the account when they apply. And that's not before they apply. If you max out your card, if you have a $20,000 limit account, you put a $20,000 balance on it this month and then pay off 20 grand and then apply, they're cool with that. But if you applied when you have 20 maxed out, then they'd have an issue. So they're cool with you maxing out the accounts as long as you're paying them down every month. Just don't apply for higher limits when you do have the balance is high in relation to the limits. That's usually preventative from you being able to get approved. Brand new business credit accounts won't get increases. Like I said, in a lot of cases, you got to be patient. It takes about 6 months. If your credit limits are too low, don't worry. Give it some time and they'll continue to raise your limits. And again, it's good practice that every 6 months you call them and request limit increases. Because why do we do this? Because again, by having the higher limits, the other people that issue you credit see your existing limits and issue you higher limits. So if you have, $2 grand or a $3,000 limit at Office Depot, you may never spend more than $3 grand with Office Depot. So to you, it might not make sense to call Office Depot and ask them for a limit increase. But if you do it and Office Depot boosts you to 10 grand, and then Staples sees that Office Depot gave you 10, well, then Staples is more inclined to give you 12 or 15. So raising your limits isn't just because you need higher limits where that store credit is. It's also to help future credit issuers give you even higher limits from them because they see what your current limits are. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Allow 60 days for these accounts to report. Again, most business credit reports account every month, just so you know that. So after you have about 10 of these accounts, the Apple, the Dell, the ones we talked about, then you got to, of course, make sure you use it responsibly. Then you can start qualifying for fleet credit. Fleet credit is used for auto vehicle repairs, maintenance, fuel. So it might not matter to you if you're in credit repair, would really matter to you if you're in the trucking industry. Then you also can get Visa cards, MasterCards, etc. Amex, I wouldn't mess with for a while. Amex is pretty tough to get approved for if you don't have $1 million in red or 3 years in business. So my advice is to not even think about American Express until you have 10, 15 accounts reporting on the reports or not. Start with Visa and MasterCard. It's much easier. If you have, again, you're going to need about a $10,000 credit limit to get to this point too. You're going to need $10,000 high limit on at least one account. And you're going to need 10 accounts reporting to start getting the Visa, MasterCards, the fleet credit, etc. And again, don't put your social on the application or they attach it to your personal credit. So if you supply a personal guarantee, if you don't mind that, if you want a Visa, if you want to get 50 grand in funding, 30 grand, 100 grand, 150, if you don't mind supplying a personal guarantee, well, there's a great program called Unsecured Business Financing that also can help you. With this one, you are providing a personal credit check. You are providing a personal guarantee, and you can get immediately, even as a startup, about 25 to 150 grand in 3 weeks or less, rates of 0% for 6 to 18 months, and you can manage it responsibly. They all report to the business credit reporting agencies. So with this program, super unique, one of the most common programs that we help clients secure. You do provide a personal guarantee. You do provide a social. You no longer need vendor accounts because you get physical Visa cards, MasterCards, cash credit that you can use that reports to the business credit reporting agency. So it builds your business credit. You're getting low rates and you get 25 to 150,000 in 3 weeks or less. So that's a really good way to go. And you can also take cash out on these accounts. So you can also physically take the cash out. If you get $100,000, you can take the cash out and get 0% rates for 6 to 18 months and physically have the cash in hand. But you've got to have a good credit score on the consumer side or a guarantor with like a 680 FICO or higher to get approved. And inquiries and utilization and all that stuff matters as well. But the biggest thing is that if you want to shortcut the business credit building process, not get the vendor accounts and get Visa cards, MasterCards, cash credit, even as a startup, no doc with no tax returns, no bank statements, this is a good way to go if you have a 680 FICO score or higher, or you have a guarantor that has one. And I have one more slide, then I'll show our phone number. If you are in this position, then I can go ahead and I'll give you a number to get in touch with us. We can talk with you more. So with excellent business credit, you can get higher and higher store limit credit cards, and you can get cash credit within about four months or less, about 120 days. And you can do all this without the guarantee, all the credit check, and you can get it even as a startup with no collateral and no cash flow as well. And of course, we can help you do that. So if you're interested in building business credit and the fastest way to get results through this program so you don't get stuck, if you do have a 680 FICO or guarantor and you want to get that physical cash out at 0%, in either of those situations, just give us a ring, 877-600-2487. That's 877-600-2487 or info@creditsuite.com. We can help you definitely expedite and take the business credit building process that would take you years on your own up down to months. And it's cheaper to work with us anyways than build your own business credit, because credit monitoring with us, for example, is only $300 a year, whereas you're going to pay $2,500 a year. 411's free with us, where you're going to pay for it. Experience Smart Business Data is free for us, where you're going to spend $600. So when you add up all the stuff that you're going to need to build business credit that we give you for free, it's even cheaper to work with us and do it on your own. And again, if that unsecured program makes sense, give us a ring, send us an email as well. Or if you have any questions, give us a ring, send us an email. We'll always sit down with you, pull your credit safe credit report for you for free, go over it with you, answer any questions that you have along the way. So if you do have questions, then feel free to give us a ring or send us an email so we can help you. And don't forget creditsuite.com/EIN to get your free guide on building business credit. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'll be back in 2 weeks. I usually do Facebook Live now every other week. The weeks in between, I do live webinars where you can answer questions. So if you're not on our email list, go to creditsuite.com/EIN, get the most downloaded guide on building business credit. And at the exact same time, you'll also get notices from us when we do webinars. And then I'll be back in 2 weeks where we dive in more and talking about loans, credit that you can get for your business. Thanks, everybody, very much for attending. I hope you have a great day. Thanks, everybody.
You've been listening to the Business Credit and Financing Show with your host, Ty Crandall. Watch for our next episode to get even more insight on financing and growing your business. And don't forget to check us out online at creditsuite.com for even more business growth strategies.